Dave is from London Wildlife Trust, and he is going to be giving a presentation on Woodbury Wetlands and the work that he's been doing there over the last couple of years.
Cool. Great. Thanks. Hi everyone. Yeah, my name's David. I have been working on this project for what feels like a lifetime. I used to have fully brown hair before I started. So we finally got funding a couple of years ago. I'll just give you a backstory to the project. Woodbury Wetlands is a very urban nature reserve. It's a reservoir still functioning, still fully operational, owned by Thames Water. London Wildlife Trust is in sort of a strategic partnership with Thames Water, trying to give them some ideas about what they can do with their assets in London that are currently fenced off, but are wonderfully beautiful, unique spaces full of wildlife, potentially if they're managed in a slightly better way. So we've been working with Thames Water over a few years. We've got a lease on this site now. It's called East Reservoir officially. It's called Stoke Newington East Reservoir. It's in North Hackney, just near Manor House Tube Station. So in terms of a location and in terms of London Wildlife Trust's objectives of engaging people in urban nature conservation, this is a really key space for us. It's within a mile and a half, 65,000 people live next to this reservoir. So you can tell the enthusiasm we have for this project is very high. It's on the back of this picture is taken from a building site. To the north of the site, we're looking sort of south east here, but to the north of the site there's a project called Woodbury Down Regeneration, which is one of the largest housing regeneration projects in England. It's £1 billion project to rehouse and rebuild an decrepit old housing estate. And obviously these reservoirs are an attractive thing to the developer to sell their properties. So we're working with Thames Water, who own the land, and the developer Berkeley Homes to raise funds to increase access and improvements on the site. The key thing about this project for us is it's a site of metropolitan importance for nature conservation, which is just a step down from a triple SI. So it's something we're really excited about. The site is quite strange. It's juxtaposition between a sort of bucolic kind of Norfolk Broads scene, and then in the background you're reminded that you're in London still. This landscape is incredible. You've got the Stoke Newington church spire kind of mirrored by the Shard, which is this wonderful thing that London Wildlife Trust likes to celebrate, the fact that there is wildlife in London and it sits side by side, a metropolis. There is wildlife there at the moment. There's lots of swans, there's a few breeding reed warbler, some reed buntings. This guy is particularly aggressive. He likes the site. He doesn't really like what we're doing at the moment, but people do come along. They come along in their sort of hundreds, not thousands, just to bird watch. This is the reed bed at the moment. We have a 7,000 square metre reed bed around the reservoir at the moment. The point of this talk, I'll get to it, is the fact that we're extending the reed bed. The idea for this project came from me looking on Google just to see what our site looked like when we first took it over 6 years ago. And I thought, God, what is that? That blob there, that doesn't exist. If you're standing on the bank, you can't see any of this green algal bloom here. The reed bed is just around the edge. So we went out on a boat and stuck a stick in the water, and the silt that's built up since this reservoir was dug in 1833. It's gone from a 4 metre deep reservoir to about 40 centimetres deep. It's never been dredged. So this Google image inspired an idea for a full-on reed bed extension on the project. Let's use the silt somehow, don't quite know how, to extend the reed bed. I'm by no means technical. I have no I started with no real understanding about hydrological bioengineering or anything like that. Got very drunk with Dave and Richard, who invited me very kindly to the Olympic Park. There was more smoked salmon than you can ever imagine. It was a very lovely event, but sure enough, they introduced me to the idea of extending a reed bed in silt. I showed them this picture and we started discussing things and came up with a plan. This is our master plan for the project, for the Woodbury Wetlands project. There are other key elements to this project that are going to make it very interesting for people to come and visit this unique urban nature oasis. For example, a boardwalk through the existing reed bed, the restoration of a Grade 2 listed old coal house, and a new education facility in the north corner. But for the sake of this presentation, I want to focus on this piece of work here. This is the idea that we sort of sketched out on a piece of paper, which is to extend the reed bed from 7,000 square metres to 13,000 square metres. This is where, unfortunately, Frog Environmental do get a mention, but we talked about some floating reed beds, about whether it was possible, but it was at the time economically not that achievable to create that much square meterage. So we carried on talking to Salix about how we could do it. What my only real insistence to the contract team was that we created a mosaic. We didn't want just a load of reed bed, because anyone knows about reed bed habitat. You grow too much, it becomes a monocrop, and then not very much grows in it or likes to use it. It's all about marginal habitat. It's all about the edges. It's all about ponds, ditches, and channels. So the challenge was, how do we create, with the existing silt that's just below the water, how do we create this this mosaic of patchwork, this quilt of habitat with other wetlands plants within it? So the answer was, let's scratch some heads and maybe have another beer and talk about it while I go off and raise loads more money, realising that it's not going to be cheap. So Thames Water, we went back to Thames Water to say thank you very much for your site. This is the sort of sexy image of Woodbury Wetlands at sunset. We said to Thames Water, thanks for your site, but we need some more money as well. So they dropped in 200k. London Borough of Hackney, we said, we're building a huge housing estate on the edge of the reservoir. Have you got any Section 106 by any chance? Yep, dropped in 100k. Berkeley Homes, they've put towards the project in the form of a bridge and a boardwalk, £250,000. Veolia love the idea of doing some kind of reed bed work in urban London. They'd never really heard of it before, so the Landfill Trust, they dropped in £40,000. And Natural England said, yeah, that's great, we haven't got any money, but sounds great. Poor Natural England. If anyone from Natural England died, we do appreciate you doing your skin. So the big one I've missed out is obviously Heritage Lottery Fund. We've been campaigning to the Heritage Lottery Fund as a wildlife trust for many a year, saying, wonderful, you're a Heritage Lottery Fund, but Britain's heritage isn't just about old churches and buildings and opera houses. It's about natural heritage as well. So have you got any money for us? So over the years they've built up a pot, and there's actually now lots of money. Anyone wants to know where all the money is for natural heritage projects, or indeed heritage environmental projects, think about the Heritage Lottery Fund before you go anywhere else. They've got £30 million allocated per year to natural heritage projects. They've only spent 10 million over the last 2 years. There's not enough projects coming to them. So that's a little plug on behalf of Heritage Lottery Fund, who asked me to say that to you today. We've got money. If you've got ideas, come to us. So Heritage Lottery Fund dropped in pound for pound, match funded every pound that we've raised. So it's a £2 million project now. And we are doing this. This is where we get technical. That's the reservoir. A cross section of the reservoir after a few bits of, what did we do? Measured stuff, didn't we? Depth stuff. So this is the estimate of what the reservoir looked like when it was dug in 1833. We've got the records from Thames Water of how deep it should be. That's the silt, the sort of beigey colour, and then the blue stuff is the water. And then that's an artist impression of the existing reed bed. What we decided to do with Salix was to dredge just a small bit of the silt. We've got loads to play with. If anyone wants to buy any silt, by the way, we've got loads. Take a little bit of the silt and just backfill it. Hold it behind a structure of some description. We weren't quite sure what. And build our sort of habitat mosaic-y reed bed behind the structure. This is the structure, which we hadn't quite defined yet. And we wanted a nice cross-section that looked a little bit like this. This is how we sold it to the Heritage Lottery Fund. Heritage Lottery Fund love little pictures like this. So these are more structures to hold the undulations, and this is the outside edge structure that we wanted to create. So as you can see, these dips and channels are great for fish fry, for young breeding birds. It's also a protection against the predating cats and foxes that are currently having a whale of a time, and the ground nesting birds in the reed bed on the terrestrial outside. So this is, in my mind, what we're creating. So we went away and came up with this kind of sketch. So this is evolved with Salix. We came up with two models, didn't we? This is a Nikospan curtain, silk curtain. What we decided to do was ram massive 3.5 metre long pine posts into the existing silk bed. On top of that, it's about half a metre, or is it a metre, the Nikospan we use in the end? About a metre. About a metre on top. So the Nikospan, just on the surface of the water, goes down a metre. Silk onto the silk bed. Then we basically floated out a big barge with a massive digger on it, scooped a load of silk and backfilled behind the Nikospan curtain. We also used some hazel and chestnut faggoting to create revetments on the edge of the existing reed bed. This will all come clear in a minute. I've got some more photos. To create more of a pond on the edge of the existing reed bed. So two types of fencing structure. We wanted to show off this one. This one was more expensive, was it, in the end? It was the hazel faggoting, but we wanted it because it was more biodiverse. It was going to rot down. Putting Nikospan into water wasn't that great for us, but it economically worked. Both are going to degrade eventually, but this one, from a biodiversity point of view, is obviously was much more popular with our conservation team. And this is a couple of photos of us in the process of doing it. You can see how the Nikospan, we lowered the water level in the reservoir thanks to Thames Water's patience. We lowered the water level and floated out this barge, sunk a 3 metre post into the silt, rammed it down, literally hammering using the bucket on the crane, on the diggery thing, and then the guys came along with those floating pontoons, those grey boxes, which are great, which we're going to buy because our volunteers can go on it afterwards, and they stitched in the Nikospan. It's effectively two pieces of Nikospan stitched together with pockets every metre, and it's slipped down like a sock onto each of the posts all the way along, tightened up, and we're ready to go. So this is our structure. We're going to take silk from here and dump it over into the other side of the Nikospan curtain. We raised up the water level. This is another shot of the guys in action. That's the big urban regeneration project happening in the background, Berkeley Homes. And this is the work happening. We're creating a shape for the extension of the reed bed. This is a picture of the hazel and chestnut faggoting work in action. Again, you can see how the silt has been scooped already and dropped over the other side of this fence line. Of course, it's worth noting that the water level is now raised up to the top of this Nikospan. With conversations with Thames Water, there's a maximum level that they have their reservoir at, and we pitched it just below that level. And it looks a little bit like this now. That's about early April. You can see how the two structures are starting to take shape. This is the hazel and chestnut faggoting fence, and this is the Nikospan fence. And you can see here, after lots and lots of digging, that we've started to create these ponds within the the new reed bed. This channel was vital for us. Like I said, it's like a moat protecting foxes and protecting ground nest, the birds that will breed eventually from the foxes and predating cats. And look at that for a shot. That's a bit of advertising for you, isn't it? Look. That's already happened. It's a bit of a cheat, but it's we took advantage of the fact that there's an existing reed bed there. We've saved probably about 50 grand, I'd say, maybe a bit more, because we didn't have to buy any plants from Salix, although your nursery is lovely. We took all the Phragmites, existing Phragmites, and translocated it to great success, as you can see. We pinched not very much, actually, and just got the rhizome root ball in lumps and just dropped it in. It's fairly self-explanatory. You can see what we did. We started to take shape. We've even got, without having paid for it, somehow someone brought along some purple loosestrife, which is great. I think it's a bit of bird poo, but we're going to try and get that going a bit more. If not, I think I need to talk to Richard about maybe buying some from the nursery. This is a before shot or a during shot, which I think is great. It's in action. The revetment's being created here. There's another revetment here, and then the reed bed extension with the moat in between, and that's kind of what it looks like now. You can see that habitat mosaic really starting to kind of take shape. There's a pond here, channels coming through, which is key for birds. In the breeding season, these channels, these protected channels. And this will just flood with reed and not be too much reed, not be overcooked with this monocrop, as I mentioned. That's from the top of the new building that's just been built. So yeah, slightly higher, obviously. So yeah, and then these guys, these are our volunteers. They're going to come along and they're going to manage the reed bed. They already manage it at the moment. They're very excited about the idea of going out on a floating pontoon with their scythes and cutting the reed bed. We'll see how it goes. It might not go too well, so we might need to give you a call about a truck saw. But we currently manage it with Obi the horse and loads of volunteers. So again, this kind of juxtaposition between, is this like 18th century Norfolk? No, it's 21st century London. This picture tells 1,000 stories and was, as a consequence of its wonderful kind of stark contrast between this urban backdrop and this rural scene. We were in The Guardian recently. This project was featured in a big 3-page feature in The Guardian newspaper, and as a consequence of that paper, we've since been phoned and visited by Shimbun, the national newspaper of Japan, 5 million readership in Japan. They flew over to have copy the story, basically. La Repubblica in Italy have visited, BBC Latin America, and the One Show are coming in October because of Obi, not because of much else. And we possibly going to be doing a thing on The World at One with Martha Carney. So the story is, it's an amazing project that we're probably all used to and everyone knows about. In rural areas it's kind of standard, but in urban Hackney it's kind of like, really, is this really happening? And this is just a quick plug for the fact that we're going to be turning this Grade 2 listed building into a cafe. It's going to look a little bit like that. And it's open in 2015, autumn 2015, so October. That's my presentation in 18 minutes and 54, 5, 6 seconds.